Good morning. How's everybody doing this pleasant, hot Thursday morning? I wanted to talk about something that has come to light. I've had a few people complain about some of the immigration processing businesses. So I intended to make a representation to WORC and the Ministry of Humane Protection and Immigration. However, I think doing this video will best serve its purpose because I'm sure the ministry and the departments will both hear about it, but also the administrative companies, as they're known under the Department of Commerce and Investments, I think it's called, department that issues the business license for these companies. So some of the complaints I have received are complaints that stem from persons filing applications and not letting the clients know. What I'm going to say today, some of you companies, you have made an investment to put a business together to provide a certain services to the public. And so when you provide these services, you have to be aware of what your purpose is and also what you are supposed to be doing. So some of the companies I received a couple complaints where applications were filed under grounds that clearly the applicants did not qualify under, and so their applications were rejected, their monies were wasted. Then there were complaints also of agencies filing applications for persons, and then those applications may have been rejected, and so the persons use another agency or they file the applications themselves, and then the agencies that previously represented the client receives the information from WORC and does not notify the client. So there's two things happening here. First of all, agencies I want to say that are providing immigration WORC application services, there is something called the Data Protection Act 2021 revision. Again, it's the Data Protection Act 2021 revision, and it is found under the legislation.gov.ky website online. Every agency or business that is providing immigration services should be aware. You should have a copy of this law readily available right next to you, every staff member in each company, so this law can become very familiar to you. If you receive an application from WORC that it was not an application that you filed, your job is to notify that client you received the application in error. They need to contact WORC, and your job is to also notify WORC, I no longer represent this client and this information was sent to me in error. Not because you have a grievance with the client that you will not provide the information to the client. What you are doing is breaching your duty of care to a client. If you no longer provide services to them, fine, return the information back to WORC or notify WORC you no longer represent this client. Do not withhold people's information, and unless, of course, if the people owe you money, if the clients owe you money, that's a whole different scenario. But you have a duty of care that if you receive information that has nothing to do with your services, that you notify the Department of WORC and do the most professional, responsible thing that you're expected to do when you take out a business license for these services and notify the client. You don't have to speak to the client, you notify them in writing. Also, you have to know the immigration law. The immigration law, so you do not waste clients' monies filing applications under sections that they do not qualify under. It is a waste of time. So I called to DCI this morning and was advised that these types of services are provided under administrative title. So these services, these businesses that provide immigration services, do not need any specialized training. They do not need anything out of the ordinary besides to file their business license, like a regular business license. So my representation to WORC today, because as you all know, before I forget, follow this page and all of my other social medias, like this video and all of my other videos, and share my videos. Back to the topic. I want to represent to WORC this morning that these companies, these agencies that want to provide immigration services, be specifically registered with WORC and to have to take a small quiz or course, maybe a 2-hour course, a 2-hour quiz or whatever they want to set up, in order to make sure that these agencies are authorized by WORC to provide these services. Now we know law firms have a whole different setup because they are regulated by the legal practitioners law, and there's another law that they're operating under now. And then we have organizations and places where we can go and complain against lawyers. The only place we can complain against these immigration agencies is DCI. This is where the Consumer Protection Agency could come in when we get our new consumer protection laws, whenever that's going to be, and we have an agency that consumers can go to complain. But nevertheless, you can file a complaint with DCI, you can file a complaint with WORC, whether against an agency or against WORC, for services that you think have been unfairly rendered. Now, again, back to some sort of training. My belief is that WORC needs to take, or the Ministry of Human Protection and Immigration needs to take this horse by the reins and have these companies comply with engaging in some sort of quiz. A quiz where they can show their knowledge of the immigration laws, they can show their knowledge of the Data Protection Act, which is very, very important. Very important. Some of you agencies can get sued for these things that you're doing. WORC, what you are doing, and I have experienced this personally some years ago, and I have seen where it has happened to persons that have spoken to me, is WORC is not paying attention to each application and where the application is coming from. So for example, if Macy Hill Immigration Agency put in an application for John Doe last month, and that was rejected or denied, and I decide I want to put in my application myself, I'm John Doe, that application, once it's dealt with, that information is sent to Macy Hill. While Macy Hill did not submit my second application, I did. So where WORC is erring, and again, I'm saying this has happened to me a few years ago with a work permit. It has happened to a client of mine some years ago, about 2 years ago. And it has happened to persons, members of the public, who have come to me with concerns where their applications are being shared with previous agents or shared with new agents, or shared with previous agents that should have been sent with them. What WORC, respectfully, I'm saying, not criticizing the department, but each application is on its own merit. And so the the what needs to the attention needs to be paid on who is submitting this application this time, which email address it has to go to, or which address it has to go to, whose telephone number. Well, WORC rarely calls people when it comes to certain applications. I'm not aware that they may call people for anything. They send emails or they send letters. But WORC, each application that comes in may not be through the same agency or submitted by the same person. So I have received, I had an application some years ago where I resubmitted it. And the first time the information was sent to me as the prospective employer submitting on behalf of someone, the information was sent to me rightfully. When I resubmitted, the information was sent to the prospective employee and not me as a prospective employer. And so I had no clue what had happened with the application. And what I am aware is supposed to happen is that both parties, they ask for emails for a particular reason at WORC or any applications, because that is a method of communication that is seemingly the preferred, fastest, safest method of communication in these present days. So WORC, that is where you're erring, and I'm not making accusations. I'm talking about what I have experienced and what I have seen presented to me has happened to persons. So I would like to call on WORC employees to please ensure that proper attention is paid to where the communication is going to, and not revealing persons' applications. I've also been told that, yesterday I was also told that employers are receiving information that their employee has applied for permanent residence or Caymanian status or RERC, and it has nothing to do with employers. But because the persons put their employment there now, there's no permanent residence to be gained under employment. This is in the US. There's no permanent residence there's no Caymanian status to be gained under employment. So why are employers, I've seen the documents, why are employers receiving employees' personal application information? So Director Scott, I know you are very much on top of things. Minister Michael Miles, I know you are very much on top of things, and please take these matters into consideration. The other matter, again, I'll go back to say, having a small crash course for these employment agencies. Now, what I was told at WORC is that when agencies submit applications on behalf of clients, their system is connected. As we all know, the ministry that was recently passed into law that, and I think it may have been done before, but it is formally law now that there are about 16 government agencies that are now communicating with each other, so they can find out information like that. But what I've been advised, and I'm taking it from the department, is that once they receive an application that's submitted by an agency, they check the system and confirm that the agency has a business license to perform these services. However, there are no stipulations, no regulations, no expectations on how these companies are supposed to perform their services. And many of them are breaching the Data Protection Act. I've seen the correspondence, I've received the complaints. So businesses, I will be advocating now for you. Let me tell you a small story. I will be advocating for you who take out a business license, whether you're a corporation or you're a small company, 4 persons, 10 persons, whatever the business license size calls for, sole proprietorship. I will be advocating for the government to, just the same as you have to do as I'm advocating for a small course for notary publics now, when the new law comes out. Notary public should have to take a small course. So should immigration agencies that are offering these services. You have to know the law. You have to know that you're not wasting your clients' money by having them file under one category and they don't qualify under that category, whether that's work permits or whether that's Caymanian status or whether that's permanent residence. Persons work hard in this Cayman Islands market for their money, and they come to you guys with a service. Here I am advocating for persons to, rather than try to put in these applications themselves, find a lawyer or find an immigration agency. So you guys have to make sure that you're doing the right thing when clients come to you to provide this service. Don't waste their money. And so in Florida, for example, a matter of fact, in the entire United States, it's a federal law that if you want to provide immigration services, you have to complete a form, and you either have to be an a qualified immigration specialist lawyer, or you have to be a part of an agency that provides immigration services, and your application is then sent to the USCIS, United States Citizen and Immigration Services, or ICE, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, in order to have your application reviewed and then approved to be an approved representative of a client. So you just can't nilly-willy open a business and say, I'm going to provide immigration services in the United States. You have to be approved by one of those agencies, USCIS or ICE. So I have done it. That's how I know. I have studied immigration law in the United States. And you cannot just open a business license and say you're going to provide immigration services and you're not complying with the law with these services. And there's no regulation, no body here, no authority. When I say body, B-O-D-Y, authority or committee or whatever we want to call them, that is regulating these companies. This is now becoming a serious thing in the Cayman Islands, that people are wasting their money with some of these companies and they're not doing what they endeavor to do. Companies, you need to make sure that you have a proper client retainer or client information contract. Make sure that it is worded properly. Clients, if you're not sure, I know many of the persons in the Cayman Islands market that are dealing with immigration, especially when it comes to non-Caymanians. Many are not many are not able to, English is not their first language. Their English is limited. Some may not read as well as they would like to, or some may not be able to understand as much as we would hope they could, because immigration is a very complex matter. It's becoming more and more complex in the Cayman Islands, as it should be, because it is a serious matter. It's a give or take against people's lives. And this is not only for non-Caymanians, this is also for our Caymanian people. And our Caymanian people are going to these agencies too and having them put in. So it's across the board. This isn't a Caymanian issue. It isn't a non-Caymanian issue. It is a client issue that these things are happening. So I want to call on the government. Now, these new immigration laws, I want to call on the government that they try to do something about this. Because clients are having difficulties. Their monies are being wasted. These agencies, some of them, are just taking monies and providing services and not doing what they're supposed to do. WORC is breaching clients' rights also by releasing some information to persons that has nothing to do with the applications. And so I want to encourage those of you who may be able to understand. And this immigration is not only about the lower tier spectrum of persons. It is about everyone in this country who has anything to do with WORC. It doesn't matter if your status is up here or your status is down there or you're middle class or whatever the case may be. Immigration affects every single one of us in this country pretty much. So if you are using a law firm, you make sure once you are retained, once they are retained, that means that you make an agreement with them for them to represent you. You make sure they give you a contract. And law firms, those contracts, immigration agencies, those contracts should be in plain language. Don't come with all of this verbiage, these words that your clients cannot understand. And you have to take time and sit down and speak to your clients and explain everything, word for word, what it means, because it is their constitutional rights. Anyone that's in the Cayman Islands or does business here, whether live, work, play, whatever they do, it is their constitutional rights, because the Constitution of the Cayman Islands protect anyone that has anything to do with what goes on in the Cayman Islands. It is their constitutional rights to be able to understand what is being given to them to sign. So please ensure, if you've sworn to provide a service, law firms, and soon to be immigration agencies that provide WORC services, you should be swearing to with a completion certificate that says I completed WORC criteria course that makes me a qualified immigration services agent. And you also provide a contract, that's an agreement, just something on a paper worded for your client to understand what types of services they're going to have, how much they're going to be charged, if they have a payment arrangement, whatever the case may be. And if you know the people are working, give the people a little payment arrangement. Law firms and immigration agencies, help the people, because what you can do is if they don't pay, then you put a letter to WORC and say, this person is not paying for these services, and WORC can put that on their file, because they can't be here working and taking advantage of companies and not paying their bills. Now, I'm not saying WORC has anything to do with that. I'm just saying that these are things you can put on clients' files if they're getting a service and they're not paying you, and you made a payment arrangement. You can take it to small claims court, or you can get your lawyer to deal with it, but you can also submit something to WORC. But that is an entirely separate thing than you providing a service that's professional, that's transparent, and that is complying with the Data Protection Act and all of the immigration acts that have now come into play, that are in force, that all applications fall under of all these changes. So again, if anyone wants to read the date, matter of fact, I suggest all of you know how to get onto social media, you know how to read all the news and all the gossip. And many of you I know can read. And again, I will say this, our laws in the Cayman Islands are some of the most, immigration is different. It's becoming more and more complex, but our laws are still easy to read. Still easy to read. So you can also call the Ombudsman office if you're not sure. You don't have to have a case with the Ombudsman office to call and say, hey, I need to understand how the Data Protection Act works. I believe that they will give you a synopsis of how it works. So I think I will leave you guys with that for now. Like I said, intended to write WORC in the Ministry of Cayman Protection and Employment about these complaints and thought best to do this video instead. I'm not going to call names of companies. I don't think that's necessary, but you companies will know who you are and what you're doing and what you've done to clients. And clients, you do the right thing also. If you make a payment arrangement with a company, you oblige with that payment arrangement, unless they're doing something that they weren't supposed to do. And at that time, you have the option to complain to the Department of Commerce and Investment. And also you can complain to WORC and let them know. I'm not saying WORC can do anything about it, but you should let them know what's happening with you if a company does not honor you with a professional way of treating you for services. If they've taken your money and wasted your money, you let WORC know that, hey, I asked this company to do this service and my application was denied because they didn't know what they were talking about. They put my application under section 24 and it was supposed to be 27C. And now I wasted my money. And you let WORC know that also so they can be aware. But Department of Commerce and Investments is the right place because that's where the business license are issued. And so WORC can see which company, if the company submits, or can see which companies have a business license that says they're doing immigration services for work applications, but there's no stipulations on there. So DCI, this is also something for you to consider bringing to the ministry and the department, coming together and trying to put something together for these organizations to prove that they are aware of the law, they have knowledge of the law, they can comply with the law in submitting applications, and they're also complying with the Data Protection Act. I used to have an immigration services. I was actually one of the very first persons that started an immigration service here in the Cayman Islands, and it was very, very calm at that time. And so things have certainly changed around here. People's rights are at risk. People are now recognizing their rights. We've had the implementation of human rights. We've had the expansion of our laws, the growth of our laws, the change of our laws. And of course, our population has increased. They said, I think it's just over 90,000 now, and we have over 100 and something different nationalities here. And so these laws are changed to protect first and foremost Caymanians, but also everyone who has anything to do with the Cayman Islands and immigration here. Marriage, living, and working. Heritage, ancestry, those sorts of things. So Caymanians or non-Caymanians, you have places to go to complain at this present time. I will say DCI, if you want to complain against a business who's not doing what you expected them to do. I'm not saying DCI can do anything about it, but they will have it there on record against the company's license. I know companies that are representing clients that when a client brings a client of theirs to them and want services, the companies reject the client. And they're being paid to represent these clients. It is, I mean, that's their right, I guess, but it is ridiculous. It is unprofessional, and we need to keep a uniformity. Cayman Islands government. We need to protect consumers and clients also against these companies if they're taking advantage of the system. And so I will leave you guys with that. My next topic is going to be marriage of convenience and that type of family topic there. Let me see who's here. Maybe I can give some people a shout out. I can't add anybody as a guest. I know this may not be an interesting topic to many of you, but I just had to do this. I am going to, okay, let me see. I'm not going to invite anyone to be a guest. Oh, that's all. Okay. Yeah, not much people on here today. People don't want to know